Why do I get this feeling that the future of frame design is going to involve some kind of rectal hydraulics? Hey folks, we are back again with another video, and today we are going to be working on a Yeti SB 5.5 frame. So we will be fully servicing the switch infinity system as well as the linkages. We're going to be changing out bearings and cleaning everything out and re-greasing everything, all right? Now, this job looks somewhat intimidating because there are a lot of parts and pieces, but the reality is this job needs to happen, especially on this guy down here, at least once a year, even if you're a moderate rider, okay? If you ride a lot, you absolutely should be fully servicing the whole frame, linkages, and switch infinity system. Now, the big question is, do you want to do this on your own or do you give it to a bike shop? The only reason to do this on your own is to save money. It's a time-consuming job. There are a lot of parts and pieces, like I mentioned, and ultimately, if you bring it to a bike shop, they will charge you a good amount, as they should, in my opinion, because again, it's a pretty involved job considering this is just a frame and we're just working on a bunch of linkages and replacing bearings, right? So doing it on your own will definitely save you money. And the nice thing about it is the tools needed aren't all that significant. Most of the tools you probably already have. The only two tools that you might not have are bearing removal tools, and there's a way to get around using a tool for that, as well as a bearing press tool, which you really should always use some kind of bearing press tool when pressing in bearings, especially into carbon frames. You don't really want to mess around with that. You want to get a proper tool, but if you get a press bearing kit specific to your bearing sizes, you're done. It'll probably cost you 20, 30 bucks, right? So it's not all that bad, and you'll be able to use it over and over and over. So if you plan on owning Yeti type bikes with switch infinity system or switch infinity systems in them, it pays you to actually learn this job as well as just buy the tools and get the job done, all right? So the process in this video is going to be similar for most Yeti bikes. At least Yeti bikes with switch infinity systems. The only ones that I could think of that are going to be significantly different are the SB 110 and the SB 115. The rest of them, even though there are going to be some minor differences as far as the main linkages, what they look like, how they're connected, how the shock connects to them, so on and so forth, overall, they will be very similar. So everything in here will sort of apply to the majority of Yeti bikes with this mechanism in it. All right, with all that being said, let's get into the tools and the parts needed for the job. As for tools for the job, I'm going to break it out in two sections: general tools and tools to install or to remove and install bearings. As for general tools, you don't need much. 4mm Allen, 5mm Allen, plus if you have a ratchet, 4 and 5mm, because you're going to have to deal with two sides at the same time, right? So two sets, 4 and 5mm Allens. A 10mm Allen, this is all to remove the linkages, all right? And a torque wrench when we put it all back together at the end. We're going to need some Loctite blue. We're going to need grease. In this case, I'm going to use XHP 222 mobile grease. It's real cheap. Get a big jug of it. Last you for a long time for this application. You could use any heavy duty grease will work. Yeti sells their own grease, so you can buy theirs if you want, but you get a little bit for 10 bucks where you get this whole thing for 10 bucks. So, and as always, safety glasses. All right, make sure you wear your safety glasses. Next up, let's go into the tools to remove and install bearings. Okay, when it comes to installing and removing bearings, or removing and installing bearings, I try to avoid having to use a punch type bearing extractor whenever I can. Sometimes we have absolutely no choice. The way these work over here is you put them inside the inner ring of the bearing, you squeeze it together, it stretches the metal open to get some really good grip, but then you have to hammer it out with a punch or something that fits the hole and just hammer out the bearing, right? I'm not a huge fan of that whatsoever, but sometimes we don't have a choice. And for two of the bearings on this particular bike, I'm going to have to use this tool. But I'm going to give these guys a plug because I really think they have a kick-ass product over here, right? Alt hub and suspension bearings. Their suspension portion of this is wrong side is excellent. And what I'm really looking forward to trying on this particular bike is the Alt Drift So this little guy here, in my opinion, is a real smart tool. The way he works is if you have a bearing, a spacer, and a bearing, if that spacer can move just a little bit, 1 millimeter, well, then you could use your alt drift to push out a bearing that you otherwise would have to punch out. Okay, I'm thinking this is going to work out real well. Outside of that, the nice thing I like about their tools is, or at least their set, and I have the whole set, it's extremely modular. So you could mix and match parts and pieces in order to both extract and install bearings. So we'll go into all those details as we get into that portion of the video, all right? And I am looking forward to it. Next up, let's go into the parts needed, and then we'll get started on tearing apart the bike. As for parts needed, since we are going to be replacing bearings, we're going to need bearings. Now, Yeti sells bearings for all different versions of their bikes, right? So this is an SB 5.5. So I got the kit for the 5.5. Now, you don't have to buy these, or at least these smaller guys from Yeti. You could buy these from a different provider and save a lot of money. These are 6,900 bearings, very popular. These are 6902s. The difference with these guys is that they have that lip, and I've never actually looked to see how popular these are. My guess is they're not all that popular. But the smaller ones, you can save yourself a good amount of money, right? As opposed to buying this whole kit. Now also, you don't need to buy the two big ones with the smaller ones. You could just buy the two big ones if the two Infinity switch bearings or switch Infinity bearings are the only bearings that you want to change and you don't want to deal with the actual dog bone bearings, right? So that's pretty much it. Let's get on to the job. Before we start, we need to make sure we remove certain components. Back wheel, it's got to go. Crankshaft, you're better off removing it. I had a bash guard. I took the bash guard out. You might not need to, but I just took it out. We also want to clean everything best we can, right? We want to remove all loose dirt from all the linkages, especially within the Switch Infinity. They should have called it Switch Infinity because, well, we just want to remove it. You're not going to be able to access some of the dirt. We'll get to that later when we separate everything, but ultimately we want to remove what we can to give ourselves as much room as possible, make it as light as possible in order to take everything apart and put it back together easier, okay? So first off, we're going to start off with removing the shock. We are going to start off on the rear part of the shock. Two 5mm Allens, one ratchet preferred and the other one whatever you would like, right? And we're going to put them on. You have two bolts that connect to an axle in the middle, okay? And there should be washers as well. So we're going to take this guy here, crack him loose. There we go. Right? Just crack them loose. Now the question is, which one of the bolts let loose? Is it this side or the other side? So watch out for that. Because again, there's a bolt on each side, unlike the front. So on this guy over here, the bolt's attached to the axle. So that means on the opposing side is where the bolt actually came loose. All right. There we go. Bolt is loose. And we have our washer. Now I could take my Allen and basically just poke out this side. So again, that's a bolt that could come loose. It's not attached to the actual rod, okay? Next we go to the front. Same premise applies to the front. Take our screws. The only thing is there's only one bolt on this side. The other head is actually attached to the rod, if memory serves me correct. So I just loosened it. The question is which side is going to come out. And the rod is coming out. Okay. Again, there's going to be washers. There's our bolt with the washer. And here's our Allen. And there is our bolt head attached to the rod with the washer. Okay. Now we can remove our shock. Be very careful. The back's going to be easily movable, but the front's going to be a little bit stiff. Just lift it straight up, take it out. Ta-da! Our shock is out. Next, let's work on the linkages. So now we're going to take out the upper pivot axle, right? We have a wedge bolt. We have another bolt inside that ties to a nut in the back, okay? Or the drive side. This is the non-drive side. I turn around the whole bike, right? So we're going to grab a 4mm first. And we're going to take out the wedge bolt. Why do they call it a wedge bolt? because it has a wedge in it. All right, so now there's a bolt on the inside and a nut at the other side over here, okay? 5mm Allen. We're gonna take this guy and we're just gonna unthread him out. Watch out the nut on the other side. When this guy unthreads completely, the nut will want to fall out. He's sort of like a formed nut. He's not a typical like hex nut. He's a custom made nut. He's just nuts. Okay, that out. There we go. So that's our axle. Okay, and this guy all the way through, and on the other side, there's our nut on the other side. So you can't go wrong putting them back together, okay? So now with him out of the way, we could swing our dog bone forward. Watch out, there's washers on each side. Okay, and we're gonna be replacing those. Take out the washers on each side so you don't lose them. There you go. So next we wanna get to the main link on the inside over here, but we need to pick up the chainstay. Well, the chainstay, the rear triangle, right? So what I'm gonna do is I'm just gonna take string or rope. You have zip ties, you could use whatever you want basically. And I'm gonna wrap it around, I don't know if you can see this, but on the top part of the clamp, above the clamp basically on the bike stand, I'm just gonna wrap this around just like that. Wrap it around the axle in the back, pull it all the way up, and basically just tie it there. All right. 1, 2, 3. Just tie it all the way up like that. And then I could tie it one more time like this. And it's not going to go anywhere. Just like that. All right. Now we have full access. So once again, 4mm for the wedge. Careful with it. Wedges out, and then 5mm to remove the axle. Watch your dog bone. There you go. And again, on the other side, there will be one of those collets, one of those little custom nuts. Just coming out. Let's see if I can force it in by hand. Doesn't want to come out by hand. Probably gonna have to tap this out when I'm done. Oop. And there goes the nut on the other side. All right, now we got to remove the axle. To remove the axle, I'm just going to take my Allen, put it on the head, and just give it a couple of taps just to push it out. Done. Axle is out. Again, it's all solid on this side, so you're not going to do any damage by tapping it, okay? Threads are on the outside. Now we could take out our dog bone. All right, watch out, there's washers on both sides of it. Ta-da, there is our dog bone, and we're going to be replacing the bearings on it. Next, we take out the axle that goes through the switch infinity link. First, we need to take out the wedge, 5mm. Again, this is a wedge just like the other one was. There you go. Now, to take out the axle, 10mm on this side, and again, there's a collet, one of those nuts, custom nuts on the other side. All right, so take this guy, 10mm, might have to hold him, might be a little bit stiff. He is a little bit stiff. There we go. And there's a nut on the other side that's coming out, so we're probably gonna have to pop this guy out using a mallet as well. So the nut came out, but the axle's completely in there. So what we are gonna do, although you can't see it, again, we're gonna go to the other side, point the Allen to the middle of it, and just tap it out. And again, you can't damage it. Okay, so this guy's proving a little bit difficult. He's stuck. I'm not taking a chance with the 10mm Allen. What I found is a punch that fits inside, but is wide enough to help force this thing out, okay? So again, something that's thin that goes wider than the actual hole, and we put them on the other side, on the drive side. Tap him in there and just give him a couple of taps and he'll come out. There you go. All right. Basically, these things are supposed to be greased, and right now there's like no grease on it. There we go. And that is our bolt. Again, the threads are on the outside. What we're doing is this. We can't damage the inside over here. It's like you literally can't damage it. So just find something that is larger than the hole but thinner, right? And it'll just push it out. So again, we're in a situation where we can't access the link, which means we have to move the rear triangle out of the way again, all because of these stupid cables. This thing's completely disconnected, and yet the damn cables are holding it in, and I can't do anything about it. All right, so we're going to loosen our rope or string, okay, and then we're just going to tie it where it's just hanging, just like that. 1, 2, 3. More rain outside. Always with the rain this year. All right, we just want it dangling just like that. Don't tie it into a knot. Make it where you could remove it real quick. 2 and 3. All right. There we go. So now we have full access to our infinity switch mechanism, screws and all. And we're going to take it out next. So to remove the switch infinity mechanism, there are 4 bolts. 1, 2, and then on the drive side, 3, 4 on the opposite side. So we got 2 on the non-drive side at the bottom, 2 at the drive side on top. They're all 5mm Allens. We're going to take them, crack them loose. All right, that's 1. Crack it loose. That's 2. We're going to do the same thing to the other side. I don't have to show this. It's the exact same process. 3, and crack this one loose. There we go. 4. And then we're going to take them out. Watch out. They do have washers on them. Do not lose those washers. Make sure the washers come out with them. Okay, I'm just taking out the 2 top ones on the drive side. Again, make sure the washer, where's the washer? There's the washer. Again, make sure the washers come out with them. Put those on the side. Now we will remove 2 bottom ones. Washer and this guy here. Finish it off. Come on. Come on. Come on, get up. Come on. The whole thing's going to want to come out. Come on. Always the last bolt, I swear. Okay. I was going to say we need to be careful for that. There are wedges that we need to keep track. Well, we don't need to keep track of them, but on each side of the stanchions, there's going to be these metal wedges that are round. We'll explain those when the time comes to install. But make sure that you get all the wedges, like these wedges are stuck on this side. In fact, that's what this screw is stuck on, is the wedge. There we go. Right, there's the other wedge. So don't lose the wedges, and make sure you take out the screws with the washers. All right. For some reason, this one's being stubborn. Let's see if we can get him now. And there he goes. And we have the washer. Cool. Next up, we are going to clean everything in this entire area. And then we're going to go on the table and clean everything and start replacing bearings. Clean everything, alcohol, paper towel, and just start wiping. This is your chance to get all those little areas that you were never able to get before. Okay. and we want to make sure we get everything. So we want to make sure we clean everything in this area on both sides where the switchfinity system is, as well as in here where the main link is, okay, to the dog bone. So I'm not going to sit here and record this whole thing. You guys get the idea. You have your bikes, you're working on them right now. You see exactly how much dirt is on there. Again, lift this whole thing. Don't forget to clean the inside of the chain stays over here where the bolts go through, and that goes for the top as well, right? So clean this whole area plus this part of the inside of the chainstay because, well, it's the only time you'll be able to access it. And we want to make sure that on the inside, all the holes are free and clear of any kind of mud, grease, buildup, or dirt, so on and so forth, okay? Same goes for this one. So we clean this whole area, okay? I'll be back. So here's all our parts. This is the switch infinity mechanism. This is the dog bone, and there's all our axles and screws that connect everything together and all the linkages. All right, so the first thing we are going to work on is cleaning everything up as best we can before we start replacing bearings, because there's a lot of dirt and grease on these guys, right? So let's start off with the dog bone. So this is going to make a bit of a mess. What I'm going to do is probably put this guy underneath to collect some of the dirt. Right, I'm going to spray him down real well and basically start grinding away and cleaning that thick layer of grease off so we could expose everything and see the condition of everything. Put this guy in the middle of the frame. All right. Oh boy. Nasty. Wow, look at that. Scraped up pretty good over there. Okay, so, wow. That bearing is mega stiff. Holy cows, that's stiff. That one's better. This one's good. This one's good. This one here's like just shot. He's destroyed. This guy's hard, but nowhere near as hard as this guy. So this guy's bad. Without a doubt, he's bad. Like, he is so stiff. I have to put so much pressure to turn him. So without a doubt, he needs to get changed, and we will get to that. Let's just clean everything well. Now these things are sort of cone shaped. This is flat. So my guess is this side here, well, not my guess, it's definitely this side here goes towards the bearing and the round part goes towards the outside. All right, those are done. Now we clean the switchfinity mechanism. These things just pop out. Well, might as well pop them out now. Just pop them straight out. And, well, let's get all the dirt out from everywhere. And we're going to make sure to clean the seals. We'll probably need a dull pick for that, to be honest. Okay. Let's moisten this down a bit. This side's a mess as well. All right. Need more paper towels. I'm going to keep on cleaning this. Let me go get a pick so I could clean the inner O-rings over here, or inner seals, or outer seals, I should say. I'll be back. I am back with a blunt pick and my girlfriend's toothbrush. So we're going to put alcohol on these outer rings. All right, let's try and use a blunt pick just to scoop up. Don't push in, just try and scoop out just like that. All the dirt on the edges of this seal. We just want to try and break it up. And then what we're going to do is grab the toothbrush and try and brush it off lightly. Try not to press in. All right, just like that. There's a lot of buildup in there. Again, don't use a sharp pick. something that's just blunt, thin enough to get in there, I could just break it loose. That's all we're trying to do, so we could remove it. All right, takes care of that side. Let's do this side. Mind frame. All right. Cool. We're going to remove that bearing anyway. Sit it real good in small areas with a toothbrush. Make sure these are the fill ports, the grease ports. Make sure you clean those out well. We're going to fill them up with grease again, but we'll have everything fresh. Now I'm going to do the bottom side or top side. I'm not sure which side this is. Again, look at all the junk that collects in there. That'd be a lot of junk. Come on. All right. This one's not all that bad. All right, I'll scrub the inside. Okay. Now to put the girlfriend's toothbrush back into the bathroom. I'm just kidding. All right. Now grab paper towel. Let's clean the inside. That's the grease port. Again, we're going to have to fill this guy up with grease when we're all said and done. This is definitely a messy job. All right, call this clean for now. Now let's clean the stanchions so we can inspect them. So far, to me, they're looking like they're in good condition. Okay, so the whole goal here is to make sure there's no scuffing, no scratches, no wear on the actual stanchions, and this one's in good condition. Let's check this one. And guys, I'm sure whoever owns these bikes or Yeti bikes with switch infinity systems knows already this mechanism. I think that's either $200 or $400 to replace it. So you absolutely want to make sure that you regularly maintain this system. You do not want wear, well, to wear it out, right? Preventive maintenance is going to save you money and go a long way. One, it'll be running the way it's expected to run. Two, again, it'll last a lot longer before you start seeing serious issues that'll cost you some pretty good bucks. And this one over here is in great condition. So I'm going to clean up the rest of the stuff. Basically, just make sure you clean up the threads, clean everything well, and then we'll get into replacing the bearings, all right? So first, we're going to start off with taking out the bearings on the Switch Infinity unit itself, all right? multiple ways to do this. There's a spacer that moves inside, right? And that being the case, it allows you access to sort of punch out the bearing. So you could put it on a vise, for instance, and take a punch and slowly punch at different sides until it comes out, right? So that is absolutely an option. You could use a bearing puller. That is an option. What I'm going to try over here for the first time is, this is an alt hub suspension kit, right? And inside this kit, we have the alt drift, and the alt drift is meant to pull out bearings that have spacers in between them. This thing meets the criteria, right? And ultimately the way it works is, first I have to find the drift that fits inside, which is this guy over here. All right, so I take the drift, I put him on. All right, then I take the rod. All right, screw him back. Obviously, I put this guy too high. Screw this guy back. All right, so then I have to make sure that I offset the spacer inside, right? So I put this guy in there. Should fit inside. If anything stops me, it's basically the center, the spacer is not offset. All right, we are inside, okay? So now I put a collar in there to center it all. So right now that forces the rod in the center. Then I'm going to take a little seal or O-ring and lock it in there so it doesn't move out. And then what I need is a cup that's bigger than the bearing I'm pulling out, basically. This one fits perfectly in there. All right, just like that. And then I need a cap. Now it's either going to be this side, whatever gives it a better fit. Oop, that's a good fit right there. See, now it's all one nice solid unit. And then I'm going to put in the stopper. Okay. And now it's just a question of, see, right now it's all tight. Now it's just a question of, will the bearing come out? Yeah, it's definitely loose. Whew. Tell me the bearing didn't just come out. What do you know? There it is. That worked flawlessly. Absolutely flawlessly. Good job, alt. That is awesome. There's the whole unit. And there is the spacer on the inside. Huh. So now we take out this bearing here. To take out this bearing, I'm just going to reverse the process. I'm going to take this guy, I'm going to put him inside. All right, we're going to take our centering ring, make sure that he is nice and centered. There we go. Okay, screwed all the way in and centered. Take our O-ring, put him down to keep him in place. Take our receiver cup, put a cap on it to lock it down. Take our stop, screw it in first by hand, all nice and straight. And now let's see if this will work. Oh yeah, I feel it working. Look how easy that is. Done. Super. Look at that, folks. Alt. I gotta admit, this is kick-ass. You need them in more sizes. Make them smaller if you can, even with a smaller thread. This is awesome. This is really awesome. I cannot believe how smooth and painless these bearings came out. Now, you could buy parts of kits from these guys. You don't have to buy the entire kit. Buy whatever works for you. But again, you can use pulley removers, basically, or bearing removers. Those are more intrusive. You have to hammer them out, basically. You put a blind bearing, I forgot what they call the mechanism. Anyway, it's like a puller, basically, where it snaps onto the bearing on one side, spreads it open so it gets grip on the bearing, and then with a hammer on the other side, you hammer it out, right? But this worked out outstandingly well. So let me clean the inside of this, and we'll use the same tool to put everything back in. I'll be back. I cleaned everything out inside. There's 4 little bolts in here. Do not touch those, okay? Don't go near these things. Don't unscrew them. Don't think about doing it. just leave them as is. Okay, those are factory preset, and that probably has to do with the bushings on the inside. Okay, so do not touch those. I also clean the axle. As far as the bearings, one is in good shape, but this one here definitely has issues. I could feel it, like it's grippy. It's very rough. So this one's definitely got problems, but not an issue because we have 2 new ones. Now, I forgot to mention before, again, make sure to clean everything thoroughly, okay? For instance, clean inside all the holes where the screws go, clean all the threads, clean all the old Loctite out. One very important thing, clean the inside over here. There is an Allen key on the inside, so when we screw it together later, we'll have good purchase with the Allen, with the whatever Allen tool, okay? Or whatever Allen key we need to use. Clean the threads off the shock bolts. This one's missing one washer, but I think I found a washer that I could use. So make sure everything is clean, okay? So next up, let's assemble the bearings on this guy. Before we install it, we need to make sure that the seats are completely clean, right? That there is absolutely nothing that will get in between the bearing and the walls or the seat. So just go in there with your fingernails, dig out anything that might be in the corners. That will absolutely help with potential creak. Okay. So this guy is clean. Now, to put the bearings in, your best shot is to use a press. Okay, there's many press tools that will do this. I'm just going to use that Alt kit. Okay, so for the Alt kit, I have to find, well, for any kit, you have to find a drift that is the exact or smaller size of the outer diameter. We never want to push in bearings from the middle, only from the outside, and we want to try and cover as much as the outside of the bearing as possible. Okay, so if you look at this one's just a hair smaller all the way around. So this is a perfect drift, and it happens to be recessed. So because this part of the bearing sticks out, so that fits just fine over there, right? I have a pilot. The pilot's used to go in the bearing in order to keep everything centered, right? And then I have the O-ring to keep the pilot in place. Then I have the drift for the rear. Now the drift for the rear has to be basically bigger than the area that it's pushing against, all right? And it has to be flat, perfectly flat. You can't have the back end like that, or else everything's going to go in an angle, all right? So one thing to keep in mind on that one. And well, then I have the quick stop. So first thing we're going to do, we're going to take a little bit of grease, and we're going to put it on the outside of the bearing. All right, this is just a waterproof grease for the outside of the bearing. I happen to be using, for just the bearings, crystal white lightning or white lightning crystal. Like I said, this is just for the outside of the bearing. Cool. So now we start assembling. We're going to do one side at a time, all right? So first, I'm going to put my stopper in. Then I'm going to put the outside drift that's going to do the pushing, right? Then I'm going to put the switch affinity mechanism. Then I'm going to put the bearing, make sure I put it in the right way, all right? Then I'm going to put in the O-ring. Right. Then I'm going to put in the pilot and make sure the pilot sits in the middle of the bearing, so it's perfectly centered. All right. Then I'm going to put in the drift that's going to do the pushing. Then I'm going to put in the handle. All right. Okay. I'm just going to squeeze it together from the back. Now, before we put it in, we want to make sure that we are as even as possible when putting it in, and that's looking pretty good right there, actually. Actually, no, let me see if I can make it a little bit more even. Bear with me. Okay. Yeah, it's looking pretty good there. And now I am just putting it in until it seats. Okay. Let me loosen it, gets a little bit more center out of it. There we go. Don't over tighten. Once you feel it stopped, it's in. All right. Then I just take out right here. And that is our first bearing. Nice and smooth, way smoother than before. The other one was like, whew, barely moved. So that's bearing number 1. Now we do bearing number 2. For bearing number 2, I need to put my sleeve in. Okay. And problem is, now I won't be able to use this guy because he sticks out over here, right? So I'm going to have to find a drift that's recessed in order to be able to put this guy on. I will be back. So I found my 2 parts. This guy's the size of the outer diameter bearing perfectly. So he'll be pushing him in a little bit on this side as well. And this guy's going to create that flat surface that we are looking for, that centered surface. All right. So now, since I'm doing this backwards, first let's grease this bearing. All right. Okay. So order of operation in this case, I already have this side all set up, right? So I'm going to take this guy, line him just like that. Make sure that the pilot, actually let me turn this guy a little bit, get a little bit more threads. There we go. All right, so that guy's set in. So I'm going to put the spacer, since that's going to go inside. Okay, so now we have the opposite side. I'm going to put him through. Okay, as you can see, he's sitting nicely. I'm going to put this guy on the other side. And this step tool over here is keeping this guy perfectly centered. Okay, then I'm going to take my quick stop, turn it. See, now I'm not even, so I got to pull it out a little bit and make sure that we are as even as possible to start off with. Like that. And now once again, we just turn. And there he goes. And we keep on turning until he stops. Boom. Beautiful. This guy's slightly recessed. This guy is slightly recessed. They are fully pressed. Next, let's put in the stanchions. Now, what we can do is give it just a thin coat of grease right now. We're going to inject grease later. But just to get it started, just take them, watch the wiper edge, boom. And there we go. Now, this is the non-drive side. And I'll explain why that sort of matters. It doesn't matter right now because you can spin them anyway. But ultimately, the screws go to the drive side on the top and the non-drive side at the bottom. All right? So we just need to make sure that they're appropriately set when we put on the bike. We don't have to worry about that now. We will have to grease this, and we are going to do that. We'll do that later, all right, before we put it on the bike. Cool. The Switchfinity, or Switchinfinity, they should have called it Switchfinity, is done. Now we work on the dog bone, and this is going to be a little bit more involved. So for the dog bone, they didn't make it easy for us. We're not going to be able to extract the bearings as we did with the Switchinfinity system. I don't have anything small enough to actually go in there and manually extract them, right? We're going to have to punch them out. And there's many options to do that. You could use a punch to try and grab a corner and evenly pull it out, but that's going to be very difficult. Chances are you're going to do well, you're going to destroy the bearing no matter what, but ultimately you might do damage to the actual seat, okay? So one of the better tools is a bearing extractor tool just like this. All right, basically what it does, it uses friction to hold on to the inner ring, and then you just punch out the whole thing, right? One shot. And that's what we're going to use over here. Not that many tools needed. You just need 8mm, 10mm wrenches to tie it down, plus a hammer to punch it out. But you will need a vise. You can do it without the vise, but this thing's going to be in here pretty tight. So it's easier to do it with a vise if you have a vise, but you can do it without a vise. So this isn't an absolute necessity, all right? So the first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to take this guy and I'm going to put it in to a bearing. My magnets fell off the back of that thing and it keeps on falling and I can't take it anymore. But right now it's the only flat one that I have that won't do damage. I got to get that fixed. So you put it in, and now make sure that you grab the inner race only. So here you have a bearing, a sleeve, a small sleeve, and another bearing. We just want to grab the bearing, okay? So make sure you're there, and then just, no, I'm gonna have to grab a 4mm. So the other side of this is a 4mm, just in case it doesn't let you tighten it down, because it just all spins freely. Okay, so now we're there. Make sure we grab just the bearing. So, can't stand it. Pile of junk. Why RockShox would make one of these things without magnets, it's ignorant. Why they have these holes over here that make it so thin on the side is even dumber. So anyway. Okay. So now don't crank too hard down on it, right? So now we're in there. We pretty much have the bearing covered right there. We take our 8mm and our 10mm, and basically we are going to tie it down in order to expand the collet. Okay. So now we're basically, let's bring it out a little bit. Okay. Now I don't know what's going to be easier to show you guys. So ultimately now, to punch it out, what we want to do is find something that covers the whole hole. The more the merrier. So a 3/8 screw works out just fine. It covers everything, right? We're not worried about damaging anything in here. So the only thing that we're worried about damaging is the seat, but this will not do that, right? So the whole idea is to put this on the opposite side, and then we just punch out the whole thing little by little, okay? I'm just wondering if this side is going to be easier for me to show you guys. Okay, in fact, I might grab the longer screw here. So basically, what I'm going to do is put this guy here because he might jet out. We're going to take a hammer now and just, it's going to take a bit, and he's coming out. There we go. And he evenly came out. Actually, there's the spacer. Spacer came out with him. Okay, so I had grabbed a little bit of the spacer even though I tried not doing that. So now, take our 4mm on the other side, loosen this bolt, so he comes apart. Okay, now spacer might be jammed in there. Bet you it is jammed. In fact, I bet you the whole thing's jammed in there right now. That's the only problem with these things. Sometimes things get jammed real good in there. So let's knock this guy out if we can. There we go. So we knocked him out. Now spacer comes out. And let's see if this guy will come out freely. Probably not. Yep, hold on. This guy might be a little bit stiff getting him out, okay? Because this is pretty thick steel in here. When he expands good. So, okay, what you might have to do is knock him out. Or, worst case scenario, take out this screw. Or bolt, I should say. Or nut, I should say. Take out this washer, take out this bolt. Right now we only have the mechanism, and maybe now I'll be able to get him out. Oh, he's in there tight. Oh, I feel him moving. Come on, come on. He's definitely moving. Yep, he's coming out. Come on. Hard to do this with my arms stretched out as opposed to using my body as leverage. Yeah. There we go. And he's out. All right. So that's one. Let me show you one more on the opposite side. Okay. So again, now it's a lot easier to take this one out, right? So, wow, what is that? Huh. Weird. It is so odd. It almost looks like squished plastic. Interesting. Anyway, I don't need to punch out the other sides. Now that these sides are gone, I could just press them out, which is my preference. Always press out if you have the option. And with this alt kit, I absolutely have the option. I have a flat side over here, so I could put a receiver. This one's actually a little bit too big, but it'll work. Put the centering tool, stop ring, screw it in, make it tight, and basically just make sure hopefully he's not pressing against that. There we go. Done. One. Sweet. Now we can do the same thing for the other side. Although this guy I might need a larger spacer possibly. We'll find out. Yep. I'm gonna need a larger spacer. It's gonna bottom out. Yep. Let me put on a larger spacer. I'll be back. I got an additional spacer in there. Take him, twist him, and I can feel him coming out already, and he is out. Ta-da! Beautiful. Look at that. So only one on each side has to get punched out. The other two, just press them out. Safest way you could do it. All right. Now to press the bearings in, we are going to use that Alt tool again. All we need to make sure is that our drift is the exact same size as the outer diameter, just like this one here. We always want to push from the outer ring, never the inner ring when we push in. So, and as far as the back drift, it has to be the size of, cover the area of whatever, the opposite side of whatever bearing you're pushing in, okay? You don't want it to sink in, basically. So what we're going to do, just like before, apply a little bit of grease on our bearing. All right. Clean the fingers. We're going to take our drift. We're going to put them in. We're going to take our bearing. We are going to put them in. We'll do the large side first, or should I do the small side first? Let's do the small side first. Which one's going to be more challenging? I might have to put a spacer. Maybe not. So, put our opposite drift, stopper. Now we want to make sure that we start off as straight as possible, just like that. All right. There we go. Now hopefully this will allow me to push them in before I bottom out. Ooh, so close. And there you go. Do not overspin it. Once you feel it hit an end, you are done. Okay. Actually, take this guy out, that guy out. Now we can finish the opposite side. So again, a little bit of grease. Now this time we have the spacer that goes in between the bearings. Put him on, put him through, the opposite side drift, stopper, make sure, oh, he's pretty straight there. And slowly push him in. There we go. Done. And then you do, why am I even doing that? Then you do the same to the opposite side. Ooh, wow, these are much more free spinning. The other one of them was like, or almost jammed. And then we do the same thing to the other side. All right, now in the kit, they don't give us a new small one, a replacement small spacer. They only give us a big one. So I just ended up using the same small one that I had in there previously. Whether it's needed or not anymore, I have no idea, but I just kept it just in case. And that is it. You get how it works. Again, it all depends on the pushers or the bearing press you have. This alt kit, very versatile. I gotta admit, very versatile. I just wish that he had a smaller alt drift that would fit inside a 10 millimeter. Is that an 8 or a 10 millimeter? I think it's 10 millimeter ring. That would be outstanding to be able to push little bearings like this out. Because with that spacer inside, that alt drift would absolutely work if it was small enough. Alt, if you happen to see this, hopefully you can make one of those soon. I would buy it immediately. All right. Let me finish this up. I'm not going to cover all of them, and we'll get on to the installation on the bike. So before we install everything, we have to grease up the switch infinity. These two holes are grease ports, and you need a very small pointy grease gun that you could pressurize and inject grease. The whole idea is the grease is going to pass through into a hole on the inside, and then we're just going to spin around the stanchion and cover the whole thing, right? And then we'll push it up and down. So the type of grease that I'm using, Mobile XHP 222 is what Fox has recommended for a long time. Yeti sells their own. Same thing in my opinion, so makes no difference. So whichever one you find for cheaper, just get it. In all reality, any heavy duty grease here will do, all right? So basically what we're gonna do is we're gonna take the pin, we're gonna put it in, and we're gonna inject just like that. It's gonna be a bit of a mess until you see it coming out just like that. Once you see it coming out, stop, all right? We're gonna do the same thing to the other side. Oop. That came out on the wrong side. There we go. So it's coming out on the sides, right? This is gonna be a bit of a mess. So what we're gonna do now, I'm gonna spread this up and down the stanchions just to take out any excess grease. So spin it side to side. The whole idea is to completely cover the stanchions. All right. Just like that. In fact, we're going to put a little bit more. Why not? All right, that's coming out the sides. Like I said, you got to put pressure against it real well, but it's coming out the sides again, right? Spin around and around. Make sure we are totally covered. Make sure the entire inside bushing is covered. And then we are going to wipe off the rest. And we should be good. Now we start wiping this mess. And this is a mess. That's the problem. It makes a mess on the bike all the time. When you do this on the bike, it's very hard to clean the excess. And it attracts a lot of dirt. All right, now make sure you clean the bleed port of any excess as best you can. Finger in there. So it'll allow for less dirt to clog up. And that's it. We are ready to install. If you see a little bit more, again, the more you grab off, the better off you will be as far as not collecting dirt. But this thing will release grease every time it goes up and down, a little bit here, a little bit there, right? So especially for your first few rides, I would really keep an eye on it. Okay. Next up, we will put it on the bike. These are all the 4 components. We will start off with the switch infinity, dog bone. Those are all the bolts. Those are the shock bolts, which we will end with. And we're good to go. Time to put everything back together, and we are going to start off with the switch infinity link. All right. So the link has 4 bolts and 4 washers. We're going to take the bolts. We're going to put them on the washer, or we're going to put the washer on the bolts. And then we're going to put a little bit of Loctite glue near the end, just like that. Okay, now do that to all 4 bolts. Put the washer on the bolt, put Loctite glue on the bolts. Next, we're going to grab one of the 4 black washers, put a little bit of grease just on the flat part so the washer itself has a rounded side, a top round, and a bottom flat, right? Put a little grease on the flat part, right? And then we're going to take one of our nuts and washers, or bolts and washers. We're going to put it in the hole on the opposing side in this case. And then we're going to put this black washer in there. Okay, and the round part faces up for the top holes, and the round part faces down for the bottom holes. So we're going to insert all 4 of those. Okay, I don't need to record it all, but at the end of it all, you will have bolt washer on one side, and this black washer, again, rounded part on top for the 2 top ones, and rounded part on the bottom for the 2 bottom ones. Next, we are going to install the switch infinity mechanism. So clean any excess grease off of it since you have the chance now. The infinity lettering needs to point up and the Fox sign towards the non-drive side of the bike, okay? And the goal is we're going to install this thing and try and fit these screws into these holes, making sure that this round part sits evenly with the washer. Okay, that's why the washers have to be flat on the bottom and round on top, okay? Or set up in that orientation. Again, the top washers, the round parts above. The bottom the bottom setup is the mirrored opposite. The round part is at the bottom, okay? And the way this is gonna work, we're gonna install it non-drive side first, okay? Watch the cable on the other side. Flip it down. Be careful we don't knock out the screws, might be a little bit tight. Put it underneath, and then we're going to slip one bolt in, and the other bolt in. Might as well start with the top. There we go. Oh, I had it. Come on. Come on, nearly there. Use your finger inside the bearing hole as a guide. Why isn't he not slipping in? The bottom, the drive side has slipped in for some reason. The top non-drive side hasn't slipped in. All right, get in there. Okay, now I'm aligned, okay? Now we're gonna grab 5mm Allen and basically screw them in by hand first. Okay. Oh, that's the 4mm, great. Grab the 5mm Allen. Okay, just be careful screwing him in. Make sure you don't strip anything. He should go in very smoothly. If he doesn't, back it out and put it back in again. Okay, got a little bit of bite there. Got no bite there. There we go. Now let's do this side. This guy is in. Oops. Oh, we know it works. Why is he not gripping? He's in there. Oh, he's a little bit too. I got to put him down a little bit, just a little bit. There we go. Okay. So we got our 2 bottom ones. Let's go back to the top. These guys should go in nice and smooth. If they don't go smooth, don't force it. Like right now, this one's not going smooth for some reason. Even though I see him, he's inside. There he goes. He just set himself in. Don't insert one bolt all the way, little by little, okay? And what we're gonna do, we're gonna go cross now, okay? To try and make it as even as possible. Just like that. All right, top right. He's actually far behind. Now, let's go this guy again. Okay, that's much better. Much better. Okay, and last but not least, just finger tight for now till we pull out the torque wrench. Top corner, bottom, top right, and bottom left. Now we torque him down. 12 Newton meters on the torque wrench, and we're going to do crisscross again. All right, so I'll start off with this guy here. Okay. Bring him to 6. Then we'll go to, that was this bottom corner, we'll go to this opposite top corner. Bring him to 6. Let's do this corner now. Stupid cables. I'm gonna get in there. There we go. Bring him to 6. Now we'll do this side. Six. Now we go all the way to 12. .01. .07. 12.04, and last but not least, .12, and our switch infinity link is installed. Next, we work on the dog bone link. So what we're going to do, first we're going to put some grease on the bearing edges, okay? And this, just like this, just a little bit of grease on the bearing edges. There's a reason for this. Then we're going to grab one of the caps. Now the cap is somewhat domed. The flat part goes against the bearing. The dome part sticks out, right? And the reason we put the grease, so it could act like an adhesive, basically. It'll stick on there for us without it falling down, okay? So do that to all 4 bearings. Cover them with this and wipe off any excessive grease, or any excess grease, I should say. Now, with the caps on, we're going to take the dog bone and we are going to insert it. So we have our dog bone link inside. Now what we can do to align the holes first before putting in our axle is take an 8mm, put on one side to help you make sure that your holes are aligned in order to make your life a little bit easier. There we go. Okay. So then we're going to take our axle, the small one of the 3. The splayed part over, well, not splayed, but the cut part over here goes towards the points at the non-drive side. Put a light coat of grease on it, okay? Then we're going to put it through, and we're going to have that 8mm act as a guide for us in order to put him in. And there we go. He is in. Now let's put in the nut. So we have the smaller of the 3 nuts, and he goes on the opposite side. There's only one way to put him in, okay? Hold him there with your finger. We're going to take our 5mm, and we are going to screw him in to the nut. Feel him coming out the other side. Now don't over tighten him. He doesn't need to be all that tight. 3 Newton meters. I'm going to grab my torque wrench. Okay, again with the 5mm, I got the torque wrench. Again, only 3 Newton meters. Done. 3 on the nose. You don't have to hold the other side. The nut is designed to stay in place. Next, we applied grease to the outside of the collet wedge, and we put him inside, and with our 4mm, screw him down. 8 Newton meters with the torque wrench. There we go, 8.2. I am done, nice and free flowing. Sweet. Now that the lower pivot is complete, wipe off any excess grease. Grease is not your friend in these parts. All right, you want to get around it, you have the chance now. Wipe everything off. Cool. That includes around here too. Awesome. Now we connect the rear triangle. Again, we are going to apply grease on the outer part of the bearing in order for our little caps to stick on. Try not to get too much grease on the inner ring or outside of the bearing. Next, we're going to connect the rear triangle to the pivots, okay? Instead of starting off with the large one at the bottom, I'm going to start off with the dog bone, because if we start off with this guy, setting up the dog bone is heavily dependent on this guy, and it'll be a lot easier to control this guy after the fact, okay? You'll see what I mean. So what we're going to do is take the long, thin axle and grease it lightly, okay? Grab a 6mm, put it on the side for now, somewhere accessible. Now, with a 6mm Allen, let's try and align the hole. There we go, okay? And then what we're gonna do is push out the Allen with the bolt. We're using the Allen as a guide, and this should help us guide all the way through. In theory, Allen. There we go. And nearly there. We're at the end. Push him out. Push him out. What's stopping me? Nothing's stopping me. Where are you? There we go. Done. Now we'll put in the bottom axle. For the bottom axle, same thing. Take the large axle, or the thicker of the axles, grease the outside. Don't get grease on the thread. Use a 10mm Allen to align. And what we're going to do is we're literally going to push out the Allen with the axle. And that should give us a better chance of done. Let's put in the nuts. Nope, yep, let's put in the nuts, and first we gotta torque these down. First we gotta screw this down, so we're gonna take the smaller of the nuts for the top one. There's only one way to put the nut in, you can't miss it on the drive side, and we're gonna screw this guy into the nut. Oop, I feel him, nearly there. Okay, don't make him too tight, we will torque him down. He doesn't need to be torqued down hard. Now let's do the same for the bottom. This time we need a 10mm Allen and the larger nut. Again, only one way to put in the nut. Just like that. There we go. And we screw him in. Okay, don't screw them in too tight. As for torque specs, the top one, 3 Newton meters. Oop, 3.12. And for the bottom one, 3.5 Newton meters with the 10mm. There we go, 3.58, good enough. Now we put in the wedges. As for the wedges, we're gonna start with the bottom wedge, 5mm. Screw it in. This guy's gonna get torqued pretty well. As for torque, 14 Newton meters. What the? .04. Let's finish up the top one. As for the top link, we take the wedge, make sure you grease the outside. Same goes with the bottom one. I don't remember if I mentioned that, but grease the outside of the wedge. Then we put it in, and with the 4mm, we screw it down. Okay. Then we torque them. Torque value for him, 8 Newton-meters. Nearly there. There we go, 8.05. Our links are done. Now we clean all excess grease off of it. Any grease that you see, remove it. Okay, now I could remove this string and we could put on the shock. I'll be back. As for the shock, we're gonna prep the bolts by putting a little Loctite blue on each one in advance. Okay, that's too much. You don't need that much. Okay, just an FYI. So do that to both bolts. Now, each shock mount's gonna have 2 washers, one larger one that goes over the main axle and a smaller one that goes onto the bolt itself. Make sure you put the one on the large axle to have it ready. We're gonna start off with the rear side of the shock. So we're gonna slide the rear side of the shock in, and what we're gonna do is we're gonna grab a 6mm Allen and use it as a guide, okay? And put it through, just like we did the axle bolts. There we go. So I'm all the way through. Then we're gonna grab the longer of the mounting rods with the larger washer on it. And we're gonna put it over the Allen key, and we're gonna force the Allen key out. Just like that, and we are all the way in. Now, take our nut, put our washer on the nut, and with 5mm, we're gonna screw him in. We won't torque him down yet. Make sure he doesn't pop out the other side. Okay, don't torque him down, because first we wanna finish up the front end. As for the front end, we want to sink him in, and this is probably gonna be a really tight fit. Always is. Okay, you might have to lift the back and then we force him down. I don't got good leverage here. There we go, it's close. Now if I lift it up, there we go. All right. Again, we grab our 6-inch and we try and fit him through. Just wiggle him through. Don't do damage, don't put too much pressure on the sides. This is carbon, right? So the whole idea is just to try and, in fact, let's grab the 5mm for now on this one and basically try and settle him in. All right, yeah, he's looking pretty smooth. This side. There we go. Okay. Well, it doesn't matter on this one because there's bolts on each side. So grab our axle with the large washer on it and we push out the Allen key. And then on the other side, we take our 5mm or our nut, screw it in. Again, make sure the washer is on the nut. I know you can't see this, but nothing major going on here. I'm just screwing down a nut with a 5mm Allen. Don't torque it. Okay, and now we torque them down. As for torque specs, 7 Newton-meters. Now, this is the axle side, consider it the female. This is the male side. We want to torque from the male side, all right? So, nearly there. There we go, 7.16. This side, they're both males. It doesn't matter which side you do it from. There. There we go, 7 on the nose. Now we grab a paper towel with alcohol on it and clean all the grease off everything. Make sure we have no grease anywhere. All right, try and get on the insides, everywhere. Wipe it as good as you can because grease is not your friend in this case. All right, I'm gonna continue. You don't have to see this whole thing, but you should get it. Ta-da! There you go, folks. A fully serviced Yeti Switch Infinity frame. What do I think of the job? Let's face it, man, this is a pain in the butt job. Not easy. I mean, I don't want to say it's not easy. It's just very time consuming, okay? So thank God you only have to do it maximum once a year, hopefully, right? Maybe once every 2 years. But here's what it comes down to. This needs to get done. This dog bone, that's 200 bucks. That Switchfinity system, I think it's 400 bucks, just the mechanism. It's a lot of money. I mean, a used frame is about double that these days, right? So it behooves you to keep track of them. Make sure you keep track of this. Make sure you grease this regularly, okay? Like every 20, 30 hours in there. You do not want the stanchions to wear. If the stanchions wear, I don't think they sell them independently. I think you have to buy the whole mechanism, okay? So you don't want to have to change this if you don't have to. Just take some maintenance, keep them greased, freshly greased, and you should be good to go, okay? The dog bone, I mean, it's the dog bone. I mean, it's either gonna go bad on you or not. Again, it's 200 bucks, so making sure that all the bearings work good is a big deal because ultimately if the bearings are off by just a little bit, if they wear, things won't be even, and that's only going to create more and more wear until they get damaged. All right. And that's it, folks. That's the video. Hopefully this helps some people out who have Yeti frames that weren't confident enough to do this job on their own. Again, it's an expensive job to do at a shop, and I agree with it because it's time consuming, as you see. Take a day in the middle of winter time or on a really rainy day and service it if you get the chance. You won't regret it. Overall, it's going to work a little bit better, but ultimately doing it on your own will definitely save you money if you have a Yeti frame, okay? Guys, if you like the video, please click the thumbs up button. Click the subscribe button, hit the bell button, bing, 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 in order to get reminded when new videos get released, all right? And there will be more videos. And until then, hopefully all is well with everyone, and we will be talking to you soon. Have a great day. Take care. Bye.